The final area I'm going to address today is an extremely deep rabbit hole. As a result, I hope to just get you excited about it, and then you'll go off and learn more from other sources. For starters, make sure that you've watched my free series on the principles of design. These videos can be found at the following URL, and they help lay the groundwork for the idea of composition and of visual flow. All right, now that you've watched those videos, you can start to see how important the organization of an image is. This here is an image of the golden ratio, which is a classic division of the page based on geometry. The shape is seen as generally pleasing, and it can form a nice structure on which you can build an image. I don't care if you are the most brilliant photorealist in the world, your painting will not have an impact if it's not designed to lead the viewer's eye. The composition is totally separate from your painting technique. Now, there's no right way to compose an image. The golden mean is just one example. So don't leave this video thinking that I'm going to give you some magic templates that you can compose an image and end up with great paintings. It doesn't really work like that. But successful images all consider how to direct the viewer's eye and really only add the necessary information. They leave out anything that might distract. I think book covers are a great example of this phenomenon. They are extremely clear. I'm sure you've heard the phrase, don't judge a book by its cover. Well, this was not a phrase written by the publishing industry. Any author knows how important that book cover is. It's the book cover's job to immediately cause the customer to judge it. As a result, the cover artist is tasked with communicating a great deal of information about the story and only in a small glance. So what does all this have to do with traditional drawing skills and applying them to drawing from your imagination? Well, it's extremely important because you have a big white blank canvas to fill. And you can either see that as scary or as an awesome opportunity. Because in a still life, you are limited to mainly changing the camera angle. That's about it. All of the content is right there in front of you, and it's not changing. But when it comes to your own illustrations, you can decide everything. And this is amazing. Should there be a character in your scene? What time of day is it? Should it be low angle or high angle camera? What are the colors? All of these questions matter. Let's think again about a book cover. Each choice that the artist makes leads the customer to learn something about the contents of that novel. Is it a dark and spooky story with dark shadows? Or is it bright and sunny with a rainbow? Every choice tells something about that story. Now, if we can both agree that composition is important, you might be reasonably wondering, well, how do I break that down into simple rules that I can use for my imagination? After all, composition seems pretty different than light and materials and form. Well, not really. They're pretty much the same. All you're going to do is simplify it down into general rules that you can remember, and then you're going to add specific details through reference materials, same as before. My favorite approach to this is to learn from the professionals. This is where it gets a little different from the previous chapters because we're not going to be observing the natural world. So what this means is that personal photos are not as useful for this, but other published media is much more useful. So my favorites are things like movie screenshots, comic book panels, covers, posters, print ads, and product photography. If you approach this as an investigator instead of as a normal consumer, each and every image around you can be a wealth of information. If you've ever heard about film students analyzing Citizen Kane in an attempt to learn about the language of film, you can do the exact same thing with a book cover or of a movie poster, and it's free. You just need to hone your skill of this visual decoding. Now, if you purchase the assignment series that goes along with these videos, you'll find a handful of different decoding assignments along these lines. So I'm going to avoid being too redundant here. The important thing that all of these different media have in common, though, is layout. And layout is just another word for composition. So you need to break yourself from the habit of just seeing the content in an image and begin to look at the structure. So this movie poster is a great example of a study in information clarity. Now, I don't need to tell you that this movie is a bleak drama. The art here is created by illustrator Chris Ware, who makes awesome graphic novels. And the tone in those graphic novels is stylistically rigid, grid-like, and cold. So when it comes to making a movie poster for this Philip Seymour Hoffman movie, Ware is a great choice. If you ignore the characters for a second, the design language alone here communicates the mood elegantly. The image is intentionally barren, which in one part literally describes the setting of the movie, but it also suggests an emotional overtone. How about the characters? They are posed in a very rigid way, and the entire composition is stiffly symmetrical. As a movie poster, it's actually more eye-catching due to its lack of detail and lack of texture, because all the ones on the wall next to it are going to be much more photorealistic and are going to have a lot more going on. And then there's this jarring contrast between the cool, quiet background colors and then the loud, red, high-contrast text. The point, though, is that there's a lot to be learned about composition just from this single poster. The choice of font is important. The colors matter. Even the direction that the characters are looking in matters. Once you start seeking out images in this way, you can be constantly learning. And luckily, we live in an incredibly media-rich era. You don't need to go to an art gallery to peer at a painting anymore. You can just flip through the pages of album covers on iTunes, and you'll be faced with almost a masterclass in composition. After all, what's more abstract than the idea of assigning an image to the cover of an album of music? At least with a movie, there's imagery in the final product. But music, it's just about mood and tone. It is not at all concrete. Therefore, the choices that you see on these illustrations on music covers is a very subtle art form. They're trying to communicate the nuances of texture and tone, rhythm and vibe, coming through a single image. And that really tests an artist's ability to communicate with design language and with composition. But here they are, a giant list just waiting to be looked at and learned from. So I hope you're beginning to see the big picture here. Composition is ethereal and hard to quantify, but you can really educate yourself for free. It's all around you. Simply find a piece of media that grabs your attention and study it. Why is it grabbing your attention? What choices has the artist made to convey the tone that the media has? Because you know what the tone is. You look at it and it tells you something immediately. So why does it feel this way? In the information hierarchy of any given piece, what's being emphasized the most? And as you begin to answer these questions, you're learning a repeatable solution to apply to your own work. So let's look at that Savages poster again. Even if you don't copy any of the elements directly, you can use some of the lessons you learn here for your own poster. For example, the stark symmetry is very eye-catching, but it's not very dynamic. It feels stiff and motionless. Well, does that general formula make sense for the story that you're trying to communicate? Here's another example that is a complete opposite end of the spectrum. This poster is asymmetrical, dynamic, and loud. It's far from stiff. The font, the blood splatter, the use of red, it says it all. This movie is violent. There's going to be tons of action in this movie. I don't care if you speak English. You look at this movie poster and you're already in the second act. Clear communication does not come easily. Artists aren't born with some innate ability to compose images which are so clearly read by the audience like this one. Just like form, perspective, light, or color, it's an acquired skill. And just like those other skills, you can train yourself to learn from the reference around you and improve your own technique. We're lucky that art is such an open media. If you were a computer programmer, you couldn't get some new video game and see the underlying computer code in order to learn its secrets. That's a closed box. But artwork is inherently public. As soon as somebody finishes a painting, if you know what to look for, you can learn the secrets. So in the final chapter, we're going to look at the similarities that all of these subjects have and some steps you can take moving forward to refine your own learning process.